Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to What's Up. This is a time when Gregg, Braden, and I get together for a half an hour to chat about whatever is on our minds. And we're coming to you today from Berkeley Springs, West Virginia, where the Arlington Institute holds forth with all of our different programs. You can find out about that at arlingtoninstitute.org. And Gregg, Braden, how are you, my friend?
John, I'm doing really well. A little distressed by what I'm seeing in the world around me. I'm coming to you from a frosty, high desert
Yeah.
day and from our little studio outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's cold here. It's a first cold blast of the season with sub freezing temperatures down in the
Yeah,
20s.
same here. It was that way here today. So winter's upon us, or headed this way. So what you been thinking about? What's up, man?
You know, John, we haven't done this for it's been a few weeks. I've been traveling a lot, and I'm a systems thinker, and I'm looking at everything happening in the world, distressed through the suffering, obviously, and yet I know that there's a bigger picture, and that bigger picture is what always fascinates me. Sometimes I look at it through the best science of the modern world, but I'm also fascinated, John, by, for lack of a better term, what I would call comparative prophecy, because there are so many different traditions from different times in history that seem to converge in our lifetime right now. And when we think about people 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago, looking into our time right now, what we're calling this, essentially, they were ancient remote viewers. From their point in history, they were looking along timelines. And if nothing changes in the timeline between them and where we are now, then they were reporting to the best of their ability and the language that was available to them and with the geography available to them, what they saw happening. So what's fascinating to me is the events unfolding in the world in general and in the Middle East specifically uh, are so accurately depicted in some of these ancient prophecies. And two things. First of all, it tells us that these timelines are real, because you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you're looking at and some of these are biblical, and I'm going to separate the biblical information from the religiosity that developed around them. So some of those are biblical, where they go so far as to identify what nations actually hook up with other nations to converge on the nation of Israel, for example, the geographic locations where they come from. But there's another piece of this, John, and this is a piece that very few people are talking about right now, is that the outcome of all of this tragedy and all this suffering actually leads to something really beautiful that is called 1,000 years of peace. You've spoken about this, and I have as well. And where I first began to hear about this, I think most people are familiar with the book of Revelation as in the New Testament of the Christian Bible. What a lot of people probably don't know, John, is that book is incomplete. And we get the version that ends with the dark version of what's possible. In the Vatican Library, the second half of the book of Revelation, the good news is not shared by many people. And it's the prophet John that spoke to the powers that be, the angels in heaven, or the community on the mothership, however you want to look at it. And he said, do these things need to happen? Is there another way? And they came back to him and they said, yes, there's always another way. But someone, they said, who on earth is worthy of listening to a greater possibility? And John says, I'll be the one that listens. And he's the one that opens the seals on the books, and it reveals a new earth, for the old earth had disappeared. And it reveals a beautiful time of hope and possibility and thriving and brotherhood and sisterhood and peace among people. And that is the message that's left out. And what the message for the whole book is, it's up to us. It's our choice. So I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by these. And I'm also fascinated by, and we've talked about this to some degree in the past, what, for lack of a better term, is called the Bible code or the Torah codes, the mathematic messages that are now being collated through modern computer algorithms based on only on the first 5 books of the Old Testament. When you convert the letters into numbers, you load them into the array, and you do the search algorithms, there is the history of the world, and every event that has happened in the world is encoded into those Torah codes. And what this suggests, John, is that I think it supports the simulation argument, that we're living in a simulation, and that those codes represent the quantum possibilities of everything that could happen, but it's up to us to choose. And so this has been on my mind because so many people feel like there's no other way, and we're locked in to the horrible things that we're seeing, and what we sense is on the horizon that will happen unless we make another choice. And that's what I've been thinking about.
That's an interesting thing, because here at Transition Talks, the series that you obviously participate in December, we've got Frank Jacob coming, who is a filmmaker from Germany, who is kind of an expert on Project Looking Glass, which is this purported technology that the government has in some super secret place, which can literally look into the future, into other kind of timelines. And so, and then bring back, obviously, information that could be useful in terms of making decisions now. And you couple that up then with some of the things that we've talked about, and that there are suggestions about that there are people here that are from the future and have shown up and are trying to tell us that we've got to change what we're doing now so that we don't end up like they landed up, and so on. And so there's this very interesting kind of place. It is part of what I have believed for a long time is the uniqueness of the situation right now, in that we humans have a capability and an awareness and the technologies and the to be able to shape and, if you will, engineer this new world, this new reality, in ways that we could never have done before. In that people, whoever they were in the past, were always just riding the wave of history, whatever was happening, and they saw no context. They saw no bigger picture. I mean, admittedly, you're talking about individuals who had this prophetic kind of vision and capability, but in general, everybody was just hanging on and doing whatever they thought was doing. They had no idea where it was going. And what we know now, or what we have now, is the ability to systematically kind of look across the horizon. We may miss things, but we can do this a whole lot better than you ever could before. And more than that, and we have the ability to extract information to support or confirm one kind of vision or not, and give us rapid feedback. And you can start to say, this is the kind of world I want. This is not I don't want that kind of world. And so you can do what in my business is called a normative scenario, which is to say, this is the desired future that we'd like. And so we can drive the system in that direction. And so all of these things that you're talking about, and the other kind of technologies and the other internet, whatever, all give us a unique, very powerful, and capability, and almost responsibility, it seems to me, to use these things for the evolution of humanity, and the raising of consciousness, and the beginning of a whole new track for the species.
Well, I agree, John. And so I think part of it's a beautiful spring point. the key to the evolution is to transcend the idea that the way you win is by fighting kinetic battle against what you don't want. We are obviously engaged, and all of these traditions have said, I mean, every indigenous tradition I've ever studied, biblical traditions, the Quran, everything says that we are engaged in an ancient battle, for lack of a better term, between good and evil,
Right.
which are expressions of light and dark. So we're in a polarity world, light and dark, good and evil. And as long as we keep engaging on the level that the evil presents itself, that's what keeps us locked into the ancient trap that perpetuates the very conditions that we hope to transcend. And I think what you're talking about and what I'm sensing, I'm just going to go back. The evidence suggests greater than not that we're living in a simulation, that we're in a virtual environment, and that the code for that virtual environment lives within each of us. It may be that the events of the world drive us to transcend, not to battle one-on-one, good on evil, but to transcend that polarity. And that's how we shift the timeline. And the technology, I'm familiar with Frank's work. I've never spoken with him directly, but we know of one another's work. It's interesting because the technology that he's talking about, governments may have it now, but it was originally in possession of the Vatican, was who discovered the inventor that created the technology, and they used it to go backward in time to validate the existence of Jesus and what they saw. And then they went forward, and what they saw is why the government stepped in and shut them down. They said, we don't want people to know about those things. So
I want to know why they want to keep the secret of all of the really good things, the wonderful future that's available, the back half of Revelation.
Well, yeah, well, that's because that is that's the fifth generational warfare of the dark side. That is the evil perpetuating those things, keeping us locked into that sense. So I think ultimately, John, what we're seeing, if we're going to get through this, we're going to have to think differently. And I think that difference may drive us into feeling and sensing into a new reality that carries us into that new timeline. And again, it doesn't have to be, we were just on Quartet, and we talked about this. And I saw this, I've seen this in physics. It's really interesting. And I always use the example of a rocket launch from Earth to the moon. If you're off just, a little bit on Earth, by the time that rocket reaches the moon, that little distance is translated, you're going to miss the mark. It makes a huge difference on the other end. We don't need to have the entire transitional shift. All we need is enough of a shift to move us off of that mark so that we can begin on a new timeline, on that new trajectory. I think Frank's going to do a good talk. I think it's going to be an exciting talk. And if I can see it virtually, I'm going to tune in.
And let me just say one thing to close here is that, as you know, here at the Arlington Institute, we're working on a project that we call Transition Net, which is to build a collaboration platform, a global collaboration platform to bring a whole lot of people together to start to build some ideas and design the framework of what a new world might look like. And when you and I were walking out of the Country Inn here, when you were here in August, when we were walking out after dinner, some nice lady came and stood on the steps of the Country Inn and said, I am working on using ChatGPT to help generate the coding, and I'd love to help you work on all of that. And I gave her my card, and she hasn't called me back. And if she's watching this, we'd really like to have you get in contact with us, because we think this is really quite important, and there's a real advantage that this new technology, this new AI technology, could give us a real opportunity to kind of move directly and quickly into this new space. So thank you, my friend. very much for the conversation. I always enjoy that. And for those of you who are our viewers, this is part of what we do here on a regular basis at the Arlington Institute. You can find out complete information about that at arlingtoninstitute.org. And we hope that you come and visit us sometime here in Berkeley Springs, where we produce all of these kinds of things. So thanks, Gregg.
Thank you
Very
so
much.
much, John. I know this is a very different way of thinking for some people, and I really appreciate the opportunity to
Well,
flesh out these ideas together in the way we do. I appreciate you very much.
We're going into a new world that is really different, that requires different thinking. So that's good. All right. See you, my friend. Be well.
Thank you so much.